Hello and welcome to the CSN3M podcast. I'm Andrew Wade with Case Specific Nutrition. On this channel, we focus on mentoring, mindsets, myth busting, all as they pertain to health and nutrition. Today's topic falls in the category of myth busting. I wanted to take some time today to discuss fat loss versus weight loss. This is a very, very subtle but important difference for all of you out there that are weighing in on the scale and getting frustrated, or those of you weighing in on the scale and getting overly excited, especially for those of you out there in the ketogenic eating world. So something to keep in mind is that when any person loses weight, so when you go into a calorie deficit and your calories drop and as a result you lose weight, you don't just lose fat. You lose a significant amount of water. This is for a couple reasons. In part is inflammation. Most of us, when we're overeating and gaining weight, our muscles and our body is inflamed because of poor choices of food, caloric excess, our digestive tract is overwhelmed from too much food. All of these things lead to us holding some extra water. A lot of times when we overeat or we have poor diets, we tend to have too much sodium, which leads to water retention. And so overall, we are in sort of an inflamed, waterlogged state. So what ends up happening is you start your diet and you start eating good quality foods like fruits and vegetables that have natural water balance properties and flush those fluids out. They manage your electrolytes better, and all of a sudden you start dropping water weight. The other reason is most people don't realize this, but when we eat carbohydrates, carbohydrates store in our muscles and in our liver as glycogen, and that pulls water into our muscles and our liver as well. And the average person contains about 8 pounds of carbs and water in their muscles as short-term energy. That's the reason why if all of a sudden we were roaming the plains and we got chased by a tiger, we could sprint away to safety. That extra energy, that extra burst, so to speak, comes from those carb stores in our muscle that is ready, fuel, gas in the gas tank, ready for you to go. So once again, you are somebody who's been eating more food than you need or adequately, so you've been maintaining or gaining weight, and all of a sudden you start to eat at a deficit, so you start to undereat, and you slowly but surely start to deplete those carb stores, and with those carb stores, the water goes. For those of you that have eaten keto or know someone who eats keto or has seen that famous post where in the first 2 weeks they lost 15 pounds, this is where that is a very obvious example. Ketogenic eating is a low-carb eating style, which means they don't lose fat as much initially as they lose water and carbs. Those carbs and water I just mentioned in the muscle, you have to get rid of those before you can enter ketosis. So in the first 2 weeks of a ketogenic diet, most people lose 8 to 10 pounds of pure carbs and water from just short-term energy reserves, which that's not an improvement in health or anything. That's just a natural process of going low carb, which is also why when people stop keto and start eating carbs, they seem to gain weight back so quickly. It's not that they would gain the weight back that quickly forever. It's that initial carb loss and that initial carb gain that is going in and out of the muscles that's leading to this water fluctuation or this weight fluctuation. So where I'm going with all of this is water weight is a factor that plays a big role. And most people don't realize that when they're losing weight steadily, they lose water along the way. The average weight loss, once you're done losing, most people have lost about 20% water weight and 80% fat. But in the first couple weeks, most people, it's the opposite. It's 80% water and 20% fat. As I said with the keto people, I always joke around because everyone gets so jealous of that 15-pound first 2 weeks weight loss. But if I took someone's body fat, their body fat percentage would actually go up during those 2 weeks because they lost 12 pounds of water, which is lean mass, and only 3 pounds of fat, which is fat mass. And so that percentage of body fat, which again, you lose more lean mass than you do fat mass, your percentage of fat mass is actually going to go up, technically. And so even though it's this big number that sounds so bold on the scale, it's not really translating to big health improvements. The additional piece is for those of you on low-carb diets, that is also why the plateau seems to occur, right? You get this big weight loss initially, and then it trickles down and becomes 3 pounds, and then 2 pounds, and then 1 pound. And then it kind of hangs around that 1 pound a week. Well, that is the fat loss. And the reality is you've probably been losing about a pound a week of fat the whole time, but your body finally got to a point where you're losing, or you're done losing water. And for really anybody on a calorically restricted diet, that's going to happen. It's more extreme in people that go low carb because of those initial carb stores I mentioned. But for most clients that I work with and most people out there losing weight, you notice that instead of weight loss being linear, right, the first week is the same as the second week, is the same as the third, is the same as the 10th. The first couple weeks, you always seem to lose a little bit faster. And people get really encouraged by that. Oh, wow, I had a big drop of 5 pounds. And then a month later, they're frustrated because they're only losing a pound and they think that their body's plateauing. It's not actually a plateau. Initially, you were losing water weight. You were losing that inflammation. But once you get a month in, you've already flushed out that inflammation and you're left with your fat loss. The reality is that the fat loss never changed. It's always been stable and steady and linear, but our water balance changes day to day, and as a result, the number on the scale bounces day to day. A number to remember is that you are 60% water. So if you weigh 200 pounds, 120 pounds of that is water. And based on how much salt you eat, based on how much you sweat, based on how much water you drink, based on how much you exercise and how intensely inflamed your muscles are, all of those things are going to change your water balance on any given day, which means most of us operate in a 3 to 5 pound weight range. Said another way, if we're retaining fluid and bloated, we might be 3 to 5 pounds heavier than when we're dehydrated or when we're at a normal state of hydration and don't have water retention. And so for those people who like to watch the scale, you're going to notice that your weight loss does not ever go down in a linear fashion. It doesn't constantly go down a pound every week like clockwork every week the entire time you lose. There's always going to be weeks where it bounces or it stays flat or it goes up a little bit or it drops a little bit more, and that variance is water weight. And it goes back to the reality of what we've talked about here in a couple podcasts, is that weight loss is really a side effect of good, healthy habits. And so if you're going to be investing in healthy habits, it's better to take an honest look at your habits of the week and say, okay, the scale didn't do what I wanted it to this week. Did it move because of something related to sodium or something related to exercise? But more importantly, did I eat in a way that I know is good for me and made me feel good? Did I move in a way that is good for me and made me feel good? If so, I need to trust this process and let the scale do what it's going to do. I would encourage people to consider, if they're going to monitor their progress, to use fat loss and use a body fat analyzer. Here at Case Specific Nutrition, we do 7-point skin fold, and we also use bioelectrical impedance to track fat loss. And what's neat about that is I can have someone come in and they're frustrated because the scale hasn't gone down, but they had a salty meal or they were out with friends on the weekend and had some alcohol, and we take their body fat and I can actually show them, oh, look, you're actually down 3 pounds of fat, but you're holding 5 pounds of water weight from alcohol-based water retention, as an example. And so fat loss allows us to see the true story. Unfortunately, the scale is not a great measure of success. It's not an accurate measure, and it doesn't only reflect progress as it pertains to fat loss. So all of you out there working on changing your body composition, remember that fat loss and weight loss are not the same thing. We have to factor in the water balance that ebbs and flows in all of us. And if you're interested in learning more, you can always reach out to us here at Case Specific Nutrition. We can give you tips and advice on how to get access to body composition data and take your body fat. We always appreciate you listening. Please subscribe and share for content updates. And then you can follow us on social media. We are Case Specific Nutrition on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. And please check us out and email us at casespecificnutrition.com.